Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Elland Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, and I'm joined today, as ever, we're back. It's 2026, Martin, and me and you, the duo that has had All Stats on its back mainly for the last 3 years. That feels a bit harsh on our editors, but of the podders, we've definitely had us on our backs for the last few years, and it's 2026. And we're here again, so nice to see you. How are you?
Cannot complain. It's been a long old day. I've had a 9-hour shift followed by two pods back to back. So yeah, I'm ready to get this one done and get back to playing Breath of the Wild, which I'm playing on. Got a Switch 2 for Christmas, so I've been enjoying playing that.
Lovely. Exactly the same over here, except the end bit about Breath of the Wild and getting a Switch. I didn't get that. Santa didn't bring me one. I've not been good enough this year, I don't think. But yeah, it has been a long 9-hour day, and there's other stuff to be done, and it's already getting late. So I won't be telling our listeners what time it is already, because it's quite late one that we're recording at tonight. But yeah, we're going to talk about Newcastle. If you are watching on YouTube, again, I said this on the first half of the pod with the Man United stuff. Newcastle fans, we've had quite a lot of Sunderland listeners and watchers infect us when we did the last pods about them very recently, and we would really appreciate if you could show us some more love than they did, because they weren't very happy with what we had to say. They didn't really like it, and I don't mind Newcastle. I much prefer you guys to Sunderland, so please be nice if you do manage to find this. And Leeds fans, if you're listening, you should all be nice as well, for sure. But give us some feedback, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and leave us a nice review on Spotify as well. That would be great too. So we're going to get straight into this and quickly cover some Newcastle stuff now. Obviously, not long ago, I guess it was August now, which was the last time we kept a clean sheet at home in the Premier League against Newcastle, was when we talked about them. But stuff has changed, I guess, since a little bit. Since that preview. So we'll talk about a few things like that, and we'll get into some other stuff about Newcastle as well. The big thing that changed mine is Alexander Isak left, and he wasn't out of the building at the time that we played them last. And they've since signed Nick Voltemade, and they've since spent quite a lot of money on Visser as well on deadline day. So new forward line, which we'll probably talk about in a bit. But the main thing to talk about with Newcastle actually is the season so far, and probably one of the more interesting teams just in terms of how it's gone. They got into the Champions League last season. This season, they are now 9th as we're recording. I have to tell you, and this will surprise you, it won't surprise Newcastle fans listening, this is the first time all season that Newcastle have been in the top half of the table. We're in the 20th match day of the season. They're the Carabao Cup holders as well, and yet this is it. The 9th place they're in now is the highest they've been all season going into this game, after beating a couple of teams recently. They won back-to-back games for the first time in a while against Burnley, where they won away. Thank you very much, lads. We'll appreciate that one very much. And they also beat Crystal Palace 2-0. So let's talk about some of their more recent form then. That's the only 2 recent games, but how have they actually looked for the last, I guess, month and a half over this busy Christmas period, Martin?
Well, it looks like they're putting out quite a decent amount of XG in a lot of these games. Just a cursory look at them. There's lots of 2s there showing XG. 2.3 XG against Man City, can't be sniffed at. 2 against Spurs, just shy of 2 against Burnley.
I see a 2 against Sunderland. Oh, wait. Oh, that's a 0.2.
Yeah, we'll ignore that one. The worst game I could have picked to watch in preparation for this one. But yeah, then Chelsea, 2.3 XG to put up. Burnley again. They've played Burnley twice in this past 10-game spell and beat them twice. So we've got to really thank them for keeping Burnley where they are. We appreciate you. And then again, 2 XG against Crystal Palace. Some games where they've also put up a lot. The opposite opponents have put up a lot as well. 2.3 XG was put up by Brentford. Oof, that's quite a bad amount of XG to put up against Brentford, to be honest. And then 2.5 against Man City, more reliable, especially since they won that game. Then 1.6 against Burnley. Wow. Okay.
Penalty.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah, there was a penalty in that. Yeah.
That's fine. That makes sense. But yeah, in the past 10, they've got 5 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws in the league. We didn't look at any of the European stuff, just the league stuff that we were bothered with. So yeah, mixed last 10 games, but putting together a decent number of wins just before the players. So yeah, that's nice of them.
It is, but then the split, this is where I wanted to come in. And I know Newcastle fans know this, but Leeds fans won't necessarily all know this. The split home and away is the crazy part of their season, because that win against Burnley was just their second win away all campaign. They beat Everton 4-1 earlier in the season, and Burnley, in their 10th match of the season away from home, they won. And that's their second win, like I say. 3 draws, 5 defeats, one of the draws being at Elland Road against us. Been rubbish. Whereas at home, way better. And like, I've watched nearly all of Newcastle's home games this season. They're probably the team I watched the most that aren't called Leeds. A few reasons for that. I won't get into it all today. But they have, 2 defeats and 2 draws at home. And in those 4 games, they were to Arsenal, where I think a draw was probably fair. Maybe Arsenal edged it. The other 3, though, they've been very unlucky. And so they've actually been a really strong home team. So even though people are saying, oh, well, they're 9th and it's not been great and their away form's been terrible, it really has been terrible considering the quality of their squad and their players. And I know there's Europe to balance and other things to balance, and they have had injuries pile up and it's not helped. I know that, I'm aware of all that, but at the same time, you'd expect more like what they've done away at home to be reflective of what they could do away, or at least somewhat closer. But like I say, the 2 draws were Chelsea, they were the better team. They probably should have won. Chelsea fought back in the second half from 2-0 down. Spurs, they were miles the better team and they should not have drawn that game at all. And then Liverpool, they lost right at the start of the season, where with 10 men, they were matching them, and it was probably a game they deserved to get something from, but they ended up losing in the last minute. So they've been a bit unlucky at home, not to have more than they have. And yet they're still doing pretty well with 6 wins in 10 games. And we're going to St. James's Park. I wanted to make this point because I wanted to say, their form's been a bit better recently. And I think those XG numbers, other than that Sunderland game and maybe the Brentford game, are also looking a lot more positive if you look at it as a kind of a running thing. So expected goals versus expected goals against, it's not too bad. But I do genuinely think this might be our hardest game left of the season. I know that's a bold statement to make this early into the podcast, but that's just where my head's at in terms of not only their form, but the performances that I've seen them put in at home. Even against weaker teams, they've been pretty dominant at home against most. I know that they weren't amazing against Palace. I've read a few Newcastle fans talking about it, and they weren't saying it was anything spectacular. But generally speaking, they've been pretty good at home, and I just think it's not a good matchup for us. And that's what I wanted to get into now. So let's actually start with the outer possession first, if that's okay, mate, because I think that is probably the thing that I'm more scared by, because they are just a team of absolute brutes. It's not just, oh, wow, they're a good home team and the atmosphere kind of fuels that. Out of possession, they're a really pretty strong team because of their intensity and because of the players they have. And why is that, Martin?
So they've just got a team that's filled with a lot of really strong physical specimens, and it means they can dominate in a lot of things which they look to do out of possession. That we're pretty much kind of like, I don't want to be, this sounds harsh, but the Temu version of what Newcastle want to be in terms of squad build. That sounds harsh to us, but it's probably true with the amount of money they've spent in comparison to us. We are aping a lot of what they look to do in terms of squad character and what they want to do with their squad. I think the out possession setup which they've got has caused a lot of problems for a lot of big sides. Especially they've done really well in Europe with this out possession approach that Eddie Howe's built up with them. It has come unstuck at certain points against certain teams, but I think largely it does stifle a lot of opposition sides and can make them look worse because of the way they do press. And they can also mix things up as well, which not always to the betterment of them. In the game against Sunderland, I'll just briefly speak on that. They were really passive in that one, so that was not the best example of what they do well. And I was not impressed with that. But if they come at us as aggressively as what I've seen them do in other Premier League games this season, I've watched a couple of games here and there throughout the season. That it's going to be a tough game for us, especially with how many games we've had recently, and it coming off the back of a pretty high intensity one against Manchester United. This is, I would probably agree with you, it probably is our toughest game that's left of the season, because we've played a lot of the top sides away from home now as it is. So it's definitely going to be a tough one for us, and I was not expecting much out of this game at all, to be honest.
No, and I think the timing's really annoyingly bad as well. I'd much rather be playing them when we've had a bit of more of an actual week break. Instead, we've just come off the back of the biggest period of the season where you play twice a week for about 4 weeks, and it's just not conducive to the team being best prepared for this game. Ampadu's got a nice rest. That's a bonus, but that's it. There's not really much else. They go man for man in midfield most of the time, and they really do aggressively use their wingers because a lot of their wingers are very good athletes, good out of possession, and so we'll basically put a lot of pressure on the opposition's fullbacks, and then the man for man in midfield means it's really, really hard to actually play around that. So you kind of have to go over it, which maybe will suit us in that sense, going a bit more direct. Fair enough. But then they've got I haven't worked this out, but they must have the tallest centre backs in the league. They've got Dan Burns out, but he's 6'7". Sven Botman's 6'5", Malik Chow 6'4", and Fabian Schär's the smallest at 6'2". Those are the four centre backs. We have a pretty tall bunch. They are ginormous, and I think all of them could deal with Calvert-Lewin relatively well, apart from maybe Schär. So it's just not a good matchup. Like you say, they're almost the better version of what we are aiming to be. Maybe they needed to upgrade with a few more technical profiles. And I don't want to talk too much about their signings, but I think even Newcastle fans would be the first to admit that some of them have not been great. I mean, Wissa's looked pretty decent since coming into the team, but he came in and he got injured straight away, and then he turned 29, and it was like you spent £50 million on a 29-year-old who's barely played all season and had that injury, and it's just like, it's not great, is it? And then Jacob Murphy's not been great, even though as a profile, I think he's okay, and he probably did add something a bit different to their midfield / left wing. He can do both those roles. He hasn't been great at all. A few others haven't been particularly fantastic. But a lot of the players they do sign end up being Alanga's the other one, actually, isn't he? That's not hit the ground running as maybe they'd hoped. But a lot of the players still profile-wise make sense. Like Elanga, in terms of being an athlete, makes sense. Out of possession makes sense. Chow's come in and been absolutely spectacular. And so, yeah, it makes them an absolute nightmare. In terms of the players that perform well, in terms of the system, out of possession, I think the ones that are consistently, I don't like using this term because it's a bit dar, but look up for it, Bruno Guimaraes, who has been one of their standouts all season, where Tonali's dropped off a little bit this season, hasn't maybe looked as good as he did last season, and Joe Linton had a bit of a bad start and has grown into the season recently. He got dropped and then came back in recently and has looked rejuvenated, to be fair to him. But Bruno G's been one of the big ones because he's actually performed well. He's his highest scoring ever season in the Premier League already, and we're in January. Lewis Hall, when he's come back into the team, has been excellent in and out of possession. We'll talk about in possession in a second. And Malik Chow has been an absolute rock for them, other than the Chelsea mistake that he made. And who was the other one? Oh, Lewis Miley, the young guy who has been superb, midfielder that's played at right back recently and just hasn't looked at all worse. He's looked really secure. He's attacked the box well as a fullback to overlap on his winger. He's done well out of possession on any winger that he's come up against. And yeah, so been really, really impressed with those guys. But a lot of players have had a bit of a dip. And I do think the reason why I wanted to say this is because when you have such an intense style and you're in so many different competitions, because they're still in the Carabao, they're in the semi-final, they've got the FA Cup next week, and then they're still in the Champions League, and they've still got a couple of games to play. It means that you're just fighting on so many fronts that you need a big squad where players you signed hit the ground running, they don't get injured straight away. And if that happens, then you're stretching other players a bit too much, because then Baltimore's having to play too much. For example, if Vissa's injured and things like that. And it's just a bit of a snowball effect on some of their squad. And that's why I think they had that dip. That's why I'm glad that we've got a pretty beefy squad, because when, again, you play a big intensity, a kind of physical way, and they really do even more than us, it just means you need that. And I just don't think the signings have worked. And that's why they've, not all of them anyway, that's why they've had a bit of a dip. And now recently, some of them coming back and some of them coming into form, it's been a bit better. So that's where we're at. And then, yeah, in possession, Martin. So, like I said, there's a few players that are really instrumental here. Lewis Hall, you watched that Sunderland game, he was easily one of the best players for Newcastle, one of the only ones that actually looked like doing anything. He doesn't look phased for me at all, and they use him a lot as one of their kind of build-up players. If Schär's playing, they'll use him quite a lot because they're really, really good on the ball. Chow's also pretty decent. And Bruno, because he's one of the only players that actually demands it. on a consistent basis and doesn't hide. And that Sunderland game was an example of where you needed some players like that to stand up and be counted, and some didn't. But in terms of in possession, mind, like how do they actually like look to attack? Because it is, from what I remember over the last few years now, it's not really changed all that much in terms of being quite direct when they get it and wanting to get it out wide as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. They do generally prefer and look better when they can be more direct, and especially when they can attack in transition. That's always going to be where their bread is buttered, and that's, I think, where Eddie Howe's teams have always looked to be better. Same when he was managing Bournemouth as well. It's just one of those things which he knows well, and it's part of his identity. I think he is trying to build them up to be a bit more able to possess the ball as well. He's attempting to build that up, but it's just not really in his nature. They're playing with a 4-3-3 like they have done for a number of years. They have had experiments with a 4-2-3-1 here and there, but largely they just go back to the 4-3-3 because that's what he prefers for his setup, because you've got the two midfielders ahead who can push forward and press and do all the things that he wants to do out of possession. So a lot of the stuff that they do in possession, they look to try to build up in wide areas quite often and to use the fullbacks that they've got. They've got two talented ones in there in Hall and Miley who can get the ball forward and progress it through carrying. And then in central spaces, you've got a couple of one of the best passers in the league in Guimaraes and Joe Linton, just the total opposite of what not total opposite, but the physical specimen that Joe Linton is, and out of possession, what he does is massive. And he just really is the opposite in a lot of things of what Guimaraes is great at. Guimaraes is intense, of course, and he's good out of possession, but Joe Linton's on a totally other level. Then you've got the forward players who can mix things up. You've got on the left-hand side, got Gordon. He's looked to be fantastic. I admit I underestimated him from when he moved on to them. I didn't think it was going to really work, but it absolutely has, and you can't deny how good he's been. He's performed in the England side as well, doing similar sort of stuff. So they're always going to be more threatening when they are able to attack in transition. So if games like this get turned into a basketball match where it's going back and forth, they will 100% dominate. However, if we can take the life out of this one like we did in the reverse fixture, who knows? But it's whether you can do it at St James's Park, where they have been a lot stronger. But yeah, that's all I'd know really about them in possession.
Yeah, I think the last thing to say really is that when we were talking about directness and when we talk about that for us, it looks a bit different for Newcastle. Like Martin said, it's more channels, it's more getting it into the wingers and then getting them support, either a centre mid or a fullback or both. Joe Linton's actually played a lot as a left winger and a left-sided centre midfield because those positions can be a bit interchangeable depending on who the winger is. If it's like Willock, who's played there a few times in the last few seasons, or if it's Ramsey, then they'll interchange. But if it's Gordon, he's a bit more high and wide. Gordon's interesting. I like him personally, but he has gone 28 or 29 Premier League games in a row now without scoring a goal that's not a penalty in the Premier League, which is a long old time for someone who you think is quite talented, and I do as well. Barnes has actually been the better of the two in terms of output this season. Goals and assists, open play in the Premier League, certainly way better. He also got a really nice pre-assist at the weekend.
You told me that Harvey Barnes is coming into form and he's just about to come and get in some players.
He's been pretty decent all season. He got he put a really nice ball in against Palace that got flicked down by Miley and Bruno put it in. But they do, it's the wide areas, it's the channels, it's where they want to get overloads, they want to have lots of bodies, and if it becomes a basketball match, like you say, it's just crazy in those areas how much they can kill you. But they do, like I say, have other ways of getting out now. They've got quite a lot of players that are comfortable in build-up. Like Miley is a midfielder by trade, playing as a fullback, and has looked brilliant as a fullback because he's so comfortable on the ball, for example. So like he's great because he can invert and he can go on the outside. It's a bit like Archie Gray in the Champ. Who did a bit more inverting for sure, but like looked really, really comfortable with the ball when he was able to do that. Miley's been a bit like that. So yeah, there's loads to like about them when they are on song, Newcastle, but the problem is they've got it wrong away from home more. Games have been not as intense, they've looked leggier, or, Eddie Howe's just got it wrong like he did against Sunderland, where it was too passive, like you say. They needed to be in their faces more, and the players just crumbled and they didn't do what they were supposed to. So yeah, and then in terms of the lineup, Martin, they do have a few players back. I must note they've been fortunate recently to have some back. Livramento came off the bench against Palace for 27 minutes. He could be given a start here because of rotation. He's a more natural fullback. Trippier and Botman were unused subs, and they're also back now. But I'm assuming they might bed them in pretty quickly, but not here. Maybe that'll be for the FA Cup weekend. They've got Bournemouth. I think they maybe wait for that this weekend. So in terms of players out, Elanga's out, Dan Burns out, Emil Kraft's out, Jamal Lascelles out. So they have quite a few defensive injuries. And Will Asula, who actually hit a bit of form at one point and was doing quite well, but unfortunately now third choice striker behind the two that are actually fit. It basically means that Howe doesn't have tons of choice, and like you've got the team, how you got it there. And I think you're right, other than maybe Livramento might come in with a start and then get taken off in on the 60th minute or something, and maybe he'll start with him and then take him off, like I say. But I think you're right. So go with what you've got there.
So I've judged it as going to be Pope in goal, Miley right back, Tau and Shah at centre back, Hall at left back, Tonali in defensive mid with Guimaraes and Joelinton ahead, Barnes on the right, Gordon on the left. Then it'll either be Visa or Voltemada. I'm not sure which. Visa's played the last two, so maybe I'd expect it to be Voltemada.
I think it'll be Voltemada.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm leaning more towards. But yeah, that's the lineup that I think they'll probably go with.
Yeah, the positives with that, I think Barnes, you lose a bit of something if he plays on the right. He can do it. I actually think he's better to play Gordon on the right, who's a bit more two-footed, so if he's coming inside, he can shoot. Barnes is reasonably two-footed himself, but Gordon's a very two-footed player once he gets going. So maybe that would have made more sense to me. You want Barnes' shooting kind of left to right, and he's good against that. Against Leeds, in that sense, we've certainly seen it. The midfield is scary, Martin. I was going to ask you who's scaring us most there, but goodness me, I'm glad Ampadu's back, but it's just such a mismatch physically, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a lot of physicality in there. Like, even when we're at our full strength, we'd struggle to deal with that. If we had Sean Longstaff available for this one, I would bloody love it. You need that
right
sort
of
of engine. Oh yeah, 100% it would be.
Got man of the match against them, didn't he, at Elland Road?
He did, yeah. So in terms of the players who scare me the most in this, Guimaraes definitely is up there. And the Chow, I've not seen too much of him, but you really rave about him. So I'm probably thinking that Calvert-Lewin is going to have a tough old day with him alongside him, because he's a massive, massive man. But one of the more interesting players that I think is in the league as a whole is Nick Voltemada.
Yes, I want to talk about him as well. Yes.
For one, he's just got a fantastic hair and mustache combination. It's just so very German. It's incredible. I love it. But people would look at Nick Voltemada and see a 6'5" target man who you just need to lump balls up to all day. But he's probably more, in terms of profile, Joel Peru. I know that's not saying he's obviously much, much better than Joel Peru, but he's probably more of a second striker than he is of a target man mould, and he's got some great feet on him. Not just good feet for a big guy, just genuinely he does have good feet on him, and he's got good finishing as well. I think he went on one spell where he was scoring with his first shot in loads of games, didn't he, at one point earlier in the season, when he first joined them.
When you looked in, it was his first Champions League game for Newcastle. Someone shot from the edge of the box, it might have been Tonali, and it hit him and went in. And it's just like, when you looks in. It wasn't even a shot. It was just it just hit him.
And on top of that, there was the lovely finish against Sunderland. Albeit it wasn't in the wrong goal. I still can't explain that. That genuinely looks like he's going to score. That header, it really does look like it. But anyway, yeah, he's one of the players who does scare me as well, because he's got a lot of talent and he won't need too many chances to score one. So if we do allow him to have some chances, he'll definitely score. And obviously Harvey Barnes scares me because of the history that we've got against him. And yeah, he's got a really punchable face. So that's where it sounds really bad, but it's just because he's scored so many really nice goals against us. And I don't want him to do well against us again, because it's just becoming a bit of a meme now, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot of players who scare me in this lineup, and we're going to have a tough old day, I think.
Yeah, I want to quickly talk about Voltemada as well because of how interesting he is. He's got 14 goals and 2 assists this season for 3 different teams because that's across Germany, Newcastle, and Stuttgart. He played he scored 1 goal in 3 games for them before he joined Newcastle. But like you say, he is misprofiled by not just Leeds fans, Newcastle fans, all football fans, Newcastle fans as well. Like, still, Nick Voltemada's, I think he's 6'6", actually, not 6'5". And so when you look at that, you think, oh, it must be a target man then. He's a striker. He must be. No, he's not. And then, second of all, you then see his first couple of goals for Newcastle, and one of his first goals for Germany, headers. He scored like 4 headers at the start of the season, and then people are, oh, well, he's good with his head. He must be really good in the air. Like, that's his game. He scored 1 header all of last season. That's not his game. Like, he's come in as this Isak replacement, but he's not really, and he might be okay in the air, but it's not his game. He doesn't want someone up his backside having to challenge for headers. He wants the ball to feet. He wants to turn his man. He wants to play nice passes. He's got a few really nice through balls he's put through to wingers and runners that have run beyond him. And when he's able to do that, he's quite a handful. Obviously, we do have centre-backs that can probably deal with him actually physically, even though he's quite a bit taller than a few of them, because he doesn't want to head the ball. It's not really his major game. He's okay at it, like I say, but like, he doesn't want those. He wants to play. And if he can play, then yeah, he'll tie Biol and Strauch and probably Bornau and Nuts. That will happen. But I think he's been misprofiled massively. And now I've seen Newcastle fans talking about it a bit more. Some of them already knew, but some of them didn't. And some of them are saying, I really don't like him because he doesn't do enough for them as a kind of, they look at him and go, you should be better physically. You should be able to hold the ball up. But he's not, because it's just not his game. It's just not what he wants to do. So they get frustrated at that. But it's misprofiling him. It's kind of asking him to do something he's not really wanting to do, and he wants to turn and play. He should actually play with Wissa as 2, I think, at some point in a 4-2-3-1 and play just off him. But they've not done that yet. I assume they might start to do that and think about doing that soon now that they're both getting towards proper fitness. But yeah, just a really interesting player in that sense, and could cause us a lot of problems with their runners because he is a good passer of the ball. It's not just Guimaraes, it's not just Chow and Hall and Tonali, who are all decent on the ball as well. It's not those kind of players. It's him as well, Voltemada. And so one to look out for sure. And he is a goal threat. He's got a few goals, especially at home. Most of his goals have come at home. So I think that's it. Let's talk about Leeds now, I guess, shall we?